Okay, so yeah, today's episode is mostly just me talking about PHP. I'll be honest.
That's true.
Yeah,
Can confirm.
yeah. I worked with PHP for a couple of decades, and I've got a few things to say about it. It's about an article that kind of reinforces the fact that it's been a huge success. So I hope you like hearing about that. Enjoy the episode.
Yeah, let's watch Peter get into it.
All right, ready to talk about a dead language, Mike?
PHP is a dead language?
I'm afraid so, yes.
Oh,
It's
well.
the common... That's what the man on the street is saying. PHP is dead.
Wow.
Having been a PHP developer for a couple of decades, or at least, part of my career was, I have never thought that was true. But I will say that every single time I have ever told anybody who knows anything about programming that I was a PHP developer, they had a slight sneer on their face when they were like, really? PHP?
Yeah,
PHP. Not a real programming language. I mean, or some variation of that.
I mean,
by the way,
that's
Mike, if you
kind of always been the case, though, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, I mean, it's very true for a long time. PHP was a shitty language, but as we're going to see from the article, once you put it on the screen.
Oh, I haven't done that? There we go.
Yeah. So this is the article that we're talking about today by Timo Teal.
Hey, stay in your lane, Peter,
sorry.
By the way.
Yeah.
I'll decide what goes on the screen.
Okay, sorry.
No, but seriously, thanks for reminding me.
So, yeah, it's called An Internet of PHP. So a few years ago, there was a guy who wrote an article called a PHP, A Fractal of Bad Design, and it had a list of all the terrible things to do with PHP. PHP, for people who don't know, is a programming language which is used to develop websites, primarily. It's also used for back-end development and all sorts of other things, but it's got a very bad reputation. And this fractal of PHP, A Fractal of Bad Design, listed all the terrible things about PHP and why it was so terrible and why other languages were much better. And it kind of was held up as an example of why people shouldn't use PHP. But nonetheless, PHP has turned out to be pretty successful. There's a graph on the screen. Oh, actually, before I go on, I should say thank you to all our subscribers. I'm putting these in at the most random times, but yes, thanks to all our subscribers. We really appreciate you. And if you're not subscribed, we really appreciate it if you would click subscribe and a like and leave a comment. Come and join us on Discord, all of that stuff. Anyway, there's a little graph on the screen here, a pie chart. I don't know. It's a weird chart, but it represents how much of the internet is using PHP to power it, and it's 77.7% purple, which is the PHP color.
And those are all WordPress sites.
Mostly, yeah. So WordPress is a content management system that was initially used for blogs, and it turned into kind of a whole thing that you can use for just, use any kind of website, really. Yeah. I mean, it's got its faults, but it was definitely very popular.
Still is, for sure.
They did a lot. Yeah, it still is. And yeah, that's what this article is all about.
Yeah, I was so like when I think I started PHP programming at like 4.2.
Yeah, so back in like
the early 2000s.
Early 2000s, yeah.
Yeah. And at the time, for me, it was a choice between ASP, before ASP.NET, classic ASP, and PHP. And I chose PHP because I didn't have to pay licensing to Microsoft. And that was the decision I made. And did PHP programming for 15 years and loved it. I thought it was a great language. I think the hit early on was that it wasn't object oriented enough for like the C snobs, but neither was ASP at the time. .NET kind of fixed that, and PHP 5 moved in that direction.
PHP's evolution was messy. Like, it started off as a hacky, thrown together set of Perl scripts, which was another programming language, which is used for these kind of things. And it was really just like a little framework for making websites. And then it kind of slowly evolved it was rewritten in C to make it a lot faster. Then it became a module as part of the web server. So it was kind of embedded and it was a lot faster. And then it got popular because it was just easy to use. One of the downsides of something being easy to use as a programming language is that people who are not very good at programming use it because it's easy. But because they're not very good at programming, they make a lot of mistakes, and a lot of common mistakes, and especially security mistakes. So it had a bad reputation from the beginning of like doing things the wrong way. The thing about it is it endured through all of these mistakes, fixed them, and made the language better. So back in PHP 3, it was just a bit hacky, not fully featured, but did most of what you needed to do to have a website. PHP 4 was kind of a big revolution, added a lot more features and was a bit more streamlined, but still didn't really. It was like the object-oriented side of it, which is just a programming methodology, was there, and it was. Yeah, our listeners know. Sorry, it was there, and it was usable. It was functional. That's a programming joke. If anybody got that. And then by PHP 5, it was actually sort of more fully featured, but still had a lot of rough edges. They skipped PHP 6, by the way, for stupid reasons, but it doesn't really matter why. But they went straight to PHP 7, and PHP 7 is where it really kind of became a very, very good language in my opinion.
7.2, baby.
It was like the OO was excellent. It was rivaled Java, which was OO from the ground up. And PHP 8, I think, has come out, or is no? Okay, some live googling because there we go. PHP 8, yes, it has been released. Right, I knew that. So it's at the point where it's just still getting better and better. It has a great community. It has a great set of leaders who incorporate ideas from other people and discuss things, and they have a pretty good transition system between like major versions where they do have backwards compatibility up to a certain point, and they do have backwards compatibility breaking changes. But it allows them flexibility, and it also allows them to speed things up. So it's just, I don't know. I'm a big fan, as you might be able to tell.
Are you? The tour guide of the PHP history of Museum of History.
Yeah, well, 2 decades of my life spent writing that stuff. So, and I was with it as it evolved. I was one of the original people who wrote an FAQ called, back when Usenet was a thing, the alt FAQ, alt PHP FAQ, alt.programming.php.
When would that have been?
Yeah. Like 99, I think, something
maybe
like that.
I read your FAQ when I was starting programming.
Maybe. I think a lot of my Stack Overflow karma is from PHP, like how to add slashes into some SQL code. Like just really basic stuff from when nobody really knew. You could just copy stuff from the manual. It's cheating, basically. Have you ever written any PHP, John? Or are you a PHP virgin?
These are so fucking old.
I know.
The first PHP I ever wrote
Obviously.
was when I was just delving into and this wasn't actually in the 18th century like for you guys. So
Jesus Christ, you can take the piss out of him, but not me, mate.
Yeah, 1999.
I get a
You're not that much younger.
So Peter's like, I play video games and I like anime. I'm young. So my first exposure to PHP. Yeah, avocado toast.
I'm technically
fellow
a
millennials.
Technically,
yeah, I knew it. See, I fucking called it. I knew it. Yeah, Peter's
hold on to
like,
that, Peter.
What year did the millennials start? Okay, so
Peter's gonna Google
my first exposure to PHP was I was just delving into tech, and I wanted to make a website for myself, like this is me website. And I didn't want to do what everyone else was doing, which was like a lot of people were doing like GitHub sites. Like hosting it directly on GitHub. A lot of people were doing like WordPress sites. Like I wanted to do it from scratch, and I didn't have any experience with web deving at all. So I just started Googling, as one does, and I landed on DigitalOcean, which is a host provider, and they do a bunch of stuff. Like they do really cool things. Actually, love DigitalOcean. But they had the craziest instructions. Like it was so detailed, everything. And I had no experience with PHP, and I really wasn't a big manual guy, you know.
Yeah.
Just a script kiddie.
Basically.
Actually,
sorry. I was just gonna say, like, and I landed on their LEMP instructions on their wiki, and I started reading, and I started learning all of these things of like how these, you know, services run and how these servers are stood up. And I made my site thanks to them and a bunch of Stack Overflow on a LEMP server running like Ubuntu fucking 14 or something, I don't remember. And I delivered some. I didn't do much with PHP, but I stood up the PHP server and stood up the Nginx server, and for some reason had a SQL server on there because that was part of it, and I had no fucking need for that, but I did it, and it was kind of like my toe dipping into like web development, and that kind of set me on the path of where I am today in security. Yeah.
I will say that is one of the major reasons why I loved PHP right at the beginning, was because their website, you could go to php.net / and then type something, and it would take you immediately to that function reference. And if the function reference didn't exist, then it would search for it instead. So it would take you to like operator stuff or the function reference. I actually tried to, I love it so much, I tried to emulate it. I wrote a version of the Lua manual, which is at the time was one massive HTML page, and I tried to copy the php.net style of manual by so you can go to Lua pgyoyo.org/lui/ and then something, and then it would show you the relevant page from
parse the HTML.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
cool.
It was one massive regex that just parsed this HTML file and then stuck it in a database and then did a little function lookup.
Now that is magic. Regex is, I mean, oof.
Yeah.
But then that's basically what the Cake framework started doing. Not with regex, but with just would pass the URL path.
Oh yeah. Well, it's called a router pattern. So
right. When I liked PHP from the beginning, but when web development became very interesting to me was with Ajax, PHP and Ajax together. That was super interesting because then you can make more responsive pages, load data in the background. And I think really, so to the original article about like, is PHP dead? Some of the new JavaScript frameworks are really very interesting. Like the React and Node.js stuff is fun to program with. I never was super into the JavaScript stuff, but like I could see myself really getting into that more.
You could make what I wanted to say is you could make some. I remember, and you guys obviously remember the fucking revolution that was HTML5 and what came with it, and all of a sudden we had these gorgeous websites where, generally speaking, most major websites kind of all look the same in their category. But then like overnight you just had all of these, like, or not overnight, but that's what it felt like looking back on it, like these do-overs where the site's interactions became so unique. And you remember the transition from everything has a page to one page infinite scroll. Like, oh my God, these UI and UX changes that JavaScript later on brought on, it's just so cool, I think.
All you had to do was make sure you were on the exact right version of Internet Explorer for that particular site.
Oh my God.
And then everything was fine.
I.e.
It's kind of fascinating how things have progressed in like just a couple of decades, which is really, in the grand scheme of things, isn't that much.
No.
But,
no. But it's just like the keyboard,
article.
Right? It's just like the keyboard. The keyboard hasn't changed majorly in like 150 years or something. We've just like not really changed it because it's such a perfect form of typing. Yeah.
Well, maybe not perfect, but the best we could do, I guess.
Yeah.
I would say. Until we have straight up computer brain interfaces.
Right. Yeah.
Then I'm in. All right. Like and subscribe. We'll see you tomorrow.